Welcome to Game Crash, a podcast dedicated to kicking open the door to your next favorite thing. Our mission, our creed, and our code is this: to make all things more approachable and accessible to everyone. We want you to find a universe that you'll fall in love with. So Skybound has recently been killing it with getting the wildest IPs with Transformers and G.I. Joe, but when I heard they were getting the Universal Monsters, I almost lost my mind. But then we found out it was the dynamic duo from the Department of Truth, James Tynion, Ivy, and Martin Simmonds, on Dracula. So I am very pleased to have you both here today. How are you?
Very good, very good. Excited to talk about our favorite town.
Yeah, I'm very excited.
Still recovering from New York Comic Con though. Is there anything?
Oh yeah.
Are you healthy at least?
I tested negative for COVID, which is good, but I still feel rough.
Good.
Very tired.
Yeah.
Jet lag.
Well, if you actually, this is the first time both of you have been on the show. So I am a hard-hitting comics journalist. Most people know this about me. So my first question is always something very tough. So I hope you're both prepared. What is your favorite sandwich?
Oh boy. That's really hard. I mean, like, honestly, a classic like Italian sub that you can get from like a good like bodega or deli like in New York it's just like there is nothing that beats that. But it's just like you got to make sure you found a good bodega, not a bad bodega.
Yeah, you've opened a whole can of worms. There's so many choices. I was in the States a couple of weeks ago. In Palm Springs, I had a French dip, which I've never had before, which was absolutely amazing. So that's gone to the top of my pile now, I think. Definitely.
That is a beautiful sandwich.
Yeah. I wanted to go back.
Now, being that you both have access to the film itself, like, so you have the access to that, which most adaptations since have not really had access to. How much of the film's aesthetics and things like that are you looking to bring to your book? Are you trying to bring that weird armadillo that lived in his house? Like, what about the film appeals to you?
I mean, like, I think there, in our initial conversations about this story, like I wrote this big, block of text before the first script, where I was kind of like, okay, yes, we want to bring in that kind of Edwardian aesthetic from the film. Our story is rooted in the London chapters of the Dracula story, and our continuity is from the Dracula film, more so than the book. Like those are the pieces that Like, as a superhero writer, I like knowing what continuity I'm writing from, and that's the continuity we were writing from. But it was just like the real thing was just like rooting it in that kind of central, like that almost black and white feel, even if it's not literally black and white in the book. But then with the power of Dracula, bringing in this aggressive color, like a phantasmagoria of horror, I think is how I put it in. Like in that document. And it was just like, and then it's just like I sort of threw a bunch of crap at Martin, and then Martin did something beyond my wildest dreams. And so the fun thing for me is we get the chance to play around with like film stills from the actual film, and as James said, playing around with color. And I know obviously there's not color in the film, but to be able to introduce that to signify certain things is really fun. And also, even like, although we couldn't use the likenesses, we could there's an approximation of likenesses within it, and especially Renfield, for example, pushing that to a much sort of more extreme state was fun. But even with the film stills, we could even place certain film stills like we call it the Vesta, don't we? But the Demeter boat ship, with the captain tied to the wheel of the ship and stuff like that. We could actually use film stills from the actual film, which is kind of, quite a privilege to be able to do, to be honest. So it's been a lot of fun playing around with it.
That's interesting. It is interesting to note that the likenesses aren't something you can get, because your design on Dracula, while it has the aesthetics of Lugosi, he's very much his own thing, and he's beautiful. But I am curious, Martin, for you, especially because this has come up, everyone spoke about it, is your color palette for this book. What has influenced your coloring of this? Because it's, even when it's not as vibrant, it's still a very unique approach to color.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's the thing that me and James spoke about initially. It was obviously it's a black and white film. So we're trying to keep it for the more kind of grounded scenes. It's he's still using like sepia tones and things that are still around that same kind of thing, a very limited color palette. But then obviously moving into like really vibrant colors when we want to show some sort of supernatural element. So yeah, I mean, it does. It sort of wavers from black and white to sepia and so forth. But then we start to introduce these kind of like, there's obviously a lot of red used. It's a vampire book after all, but we start to introduce sort of very subtle amounts of red, and then there's a page turn. There's lots of bright color, so it's a really good. It's kind of like it can be used as a good signifier for what's to come, really. But yeah, so it's just fun playing with those contrasts, playing with those sort of juxtaposition of the black and white and color, really, and it adds more impact. You have the highs and the lows.
Yeah, your use of red in this book is unbelievable. Now, one of the major characters in issue 1 is Renfield. I'm very interested in how you both are approaching him as a character, because at some points he's hinged and some points he's completely off the rocker. So how do you approach a character like him being kind of like our POV for the beginning?
Well, I mean, I think one of my favorite images in the entire Dracula film, is when you find the Dwight Frye Renfield down in the hull of the ship. Like, it is just like, and he's just like wide-eyed. Like there's something like so like beautiful in his performance of Renfield, where it's just like, it is this manic insanity, but there's this gentleness to him too. That is like, and it is something that I find fairly unique to the Universal adaptation. Even other adaptations, I feel like they draw it from the Universal film, not the original source material. But it is like honestly, I was just trying to capture that, like, the haunting way that Dwight Frye speaks. Like that was something that I was trying to find in the dialogue. But so much of like what Renfield has become in this comic was seeing the first few pages that Martin turned in and was like, oh, Renfield's going to be in this book a lot more, just because I want to see Martin draw him a lot more.
I think Renfield, I think that's the way I've always seen him. Like in my head, even before we talked about doing this book, I think that was very. I mean, even if you look at Dwight Frye when in the film, they still use that when he starts to get a little bit more worn down, and you can see that they're using darker eye makeup. But I wanted to push that to quite an extreme. Like he's been stretched, as in worn down, and become something sort of it's like a half-life, I would say that he's in. So it's like, I love the idea of him, like his features are worn away a little bit more, and it's showing that the power of Dracula's kind of just wearing him thin, really. So all you're left with is these like sort of very basic features, and that's why there's that kind of blurring on it as well, like he's phasing in and out. But then there's also those fun moments where he completely loses it with Dr. Seward, and you can create this kind of much more kind of like fantastical, kind of strange, warped version of that.
Yeah, that scene is. I can't wait for people to see that because it's intense. Now, as we all know, vampires are sexy. How do you approach that as a kind of aesthetic for the genre? Like vampires, people are horny for vampires. James, how do you write that?
I mean, I think that there's I don't know. There's something very visceral in the appeal of the seductive power of Dracula. Like, and I think that is something that we wanted. Like, this isn't, this isn't Dracula as a romance comic. Like that, we didn't want to like lean in that directly, but there is still that kind of sexual power in Dracula that was very, very much what we wanted to lure into this. And I think like some of that through some of that is just the power of Dracula is in his eyes was something that, that was almost like the two key images that I remember talking to Martin about before we started working on this was Renfield in the hull of the ship and those close-up shots of Bela Lugosi's eyes when he's just like staring at someone, and you can see the sort of power radiating from him. And it's just like trying to capture that element of the appeal. And there is, there is longing. There is, there is a draw toward Dracula. But it is, it's like that. But there's also, because we're adapting from a 1930s film, there's something very repressed about all sexuality in the story. And we did want to have both the perverse qualities of Dracula and the very conservatism of that time, override it, overwhelming it all. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the eyes thing is very apparent in this book. Now, my final question is for Martin. What about vampires for you appeals to you as an artist? Like, what in their expressions or their powers, what is most exciting for you to get to work with as an artist?
That's interesting. Specifically for in this book, especially as we're not able to use the likeness of Bela Lugosi. There's so many things when you watch the film that you instantly know it's him as a vampire. It's like his hands, the way his hands are, things like that. It's this kind of how can I put it? It's almost like a insectoid sort of feel to the way he kind of moves and the way his hands are and things like that. Those kind of things always strike a chord with me. Like Nosferatu as well. Nosferatu is another one. Like you can play with shadows and you can play with this kind of weird weird stuff. But it's always in the hands for me, Dracula, with vampires, which is a kind of, not the fangs, it's the hands. But it's definitely like if you look in the film when he creeps forward, you can see it. Actually, I've used some of that in the book. You can see the way that the hands are posed and things like that. They're all kind of really strange, unusual, also unnatural. It's an unnatural feel to them. That's what's really appealing,
That is such an interesting answer to that question. Thank you.
Because if you took away Bela Lugosi's face, you'd still know that's Bela Lugosi. Yeah, like the way he's done it. He obviously, even the costume stuff, it's all become so iconic. But that for me was the other thing that's always struck a chord. And it's the same in Nosferatu. When you look at Nosferatu, he's got really large hands. It's like really strange, like nightmarish kind of. I know it's a very different style of vampire.
Yeah. But it still has that same aesthetic. But thank you both for being here. I
was just going to say, you obviously need lots of red in it as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah. God, I'm so enthralled by your red use of the color. The book will be on shelves on October 25th from Skybound and Image. Make sure you go to your local comic shop to pick it up and let them know that you would like it. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.